Ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to our session on mobilizing private sector engagement for climate-smart agricultural innovation. I'm Simon O'Connell, SNV CEO, and moderating this session, which is a great pleasure for me, and we really want to explore how mobilizing private sector engagement can foster agricultural innovation. We've some fantastic speakers for our session today from industry, policy, government, and development spheres. And I'll introduce them all to you all in a minute. Just to be super brief with my introductory remarks, I've just arrived here in Glasgow from a few weeks in East and West Africa. I've had the pleasure, the privilege to see some of SNV's work. And I've been inspired to see initiatives such as our work with biodigesters, our work enabling pastoralists to access information which is reducing herd losses by up to 15%, and our work in hybrid forms of seeds and technologies which are increasing yields to smallholder farmers. So there's lots and lots of opportunity and lots of great things happening. And at the same time, having been in Mali, in Ethiopia, in Burkina Faso, it's clear there is so much more to do. And that's precisely why we need conversations like we're about to have today. And it's so clear, whilst there is significant investment from the private sector in mitigation activities, there is particularly more to do on the adaptation side. So to our speakers. Online with us, we have Sani Helderman. Sani is the Senior Researcher for the Food and Agricultural Transformation work at the World Benchmarking Alliance. We have Andy Jarvis next to me here. Andy is the Associate Director for Research, Strategy and Innovation of the Alliance of Biodiversity International and SIAT. Carla Montessori, welcome, is currently Director at the European Commission's Directorate General for International Partnerships, DG Inter. Jakob Ntunganan, who's with us from Uganda. Jakob is SNV's multi-country advisor for energy and agriculture on our Climate Resilient Agribusiness for Tomorrow program. Elia Timoteo, who has worked for both the Tanzanian Ministry of Agriculture and Finance and is the founder and CEO of East Africa Fruits. Rennie Van Hel with us. Rennie is the Director for Inclusive Green Growth, Ambassador for Sustainable Development and Arctic Ambassador at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Netherlands since August 2021. And lastly, Simon Calvert, who will join us for some closing remarks. Simon, who leads the UK's Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office's policy work on commercial agriculture, working with businesses, investors and farmers to drive inclusive, sustainable growth in developing countries. So we'll turn first, ladies and gentlemen, to our first keynote from Sani. Hoping the technology is going to work. Sani, over to you for your keynote.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you for the introduction. I hope everything is working. We did do a test. Thank you. Thank you for letting me know. I'm really happy to, as WBA, be co-hosting this event together with CCAPS and together with you, SNV, this important event during COP. And I'm also very proud to be joining colleagues this week who have just launched the Just Transition Benchmark last week. It assesses 180 companies in the world's highest emitting industries on their performance on the decarbonization and energy transformation. That leaves no one behind. I really encourage you to go to our website and check that one out. It emphasizes the key role also that businesses have to play on this road to Paris and the need for accountability. It's also why I was asked to be telling you a little bit more about today about the food and agriculture benchmark. Food and agriculture being one of the key transformations, one of the key systems that need transformations, that needs a transformation in order to achieve the sustainable development goals, as well as the Paris goals. So that's today what I will be focusing on. It's clear that food and agriculture needs a transformation. There are clear roadmaps out there that guide and help companies on their path toward achieving key SDGs, and to ensure sustainable business practices along their value chains. The Food and Agriculture Benchmark that the WBA is responsible for, that we've just launched on the 21st of September this year, assesses 350 of the largest keystone companies along the food value chain on their performance on key issues on food system transformation. Because if you go to the next slide, you will see that food production, sorry, yes, this slide, thank you. You will see that food production, and I don't think I need to tell this audience, is responsible for a substantial part of the contribution to GHG emissions. We think it's important to hold accountable those that are responsible for food production and for these emissions. But food production is not only about emissions, it's more than that. If you go to the next slide, you will see that when we talk about climate smart agriculture and sustainable food production practices, there's also an important social elements that we need to consider. But also on the environmental impact side, there is more in-depth knowledge that we need about the impact and the performance that companies show with regard to their business practices. On slide 5, you will see indeed the methodology that we have developed, this roadmap for the private sector toward food system transformation. As said, we assess 350 of the largest keystone companies along the value chain on their performance on key issues underpinning these pillars that you see on the screen. So not only on environment, where we assess companies on GHG, on food loss, on soil health and agrobiodiversity, and much more, but also on nutrition. What do companies do on the hunger agenda? We just learned a lot again this week from WFP and the alarming numbers that they have provided to us with regard to hunger. How are companies achieving key issues underpinning this agenda? But also on social. We have a number of indicators that assess how companies are leaving no one behind on this important agenda. It's a clear roadmap that companies can take toward doing more and stepping up their efforts on food system transformation. This assessment that we have done shows quite a lot of insights on how companies are performing. 5 minutes is way too short to give you a full-fledged overview of all those outcomes, but I do hope to give you sort of a flavor of what we have shown in the benchmark, but everything can be found on our website, which is publicly available, worldbenchmarkingalliance.org. If you go to the next slide, you will see the ranking and some of the key results of this benchmark. You will see the top 10 companies. It's not clear on my screen, I hope it is on yours, but it shows the top 10 companies in the benchmark. What is interesting to note here is that the top 10 includes most of the industries that or sectors that we look at in the benchmark. That is an interesting thing because it shows that leadership can be seen across the board and across all sectors. Leadership that hopefully will trickle down into industries, and that will help encourage other companies to do more. But that is it for the good news, I think, because if you look on the right side of your screen, you will see that there are many companies in the benchmark that are really not up to speed when it comes to achieving key sustainability on their road to food system transformation. So a lot more needs to be done. I will go a little bit more deeper into in some of these key outcomes. We'll need to read that up. Yes, please. If you go to slide 7, yes. You will see, I think this is one of the key outcomes, and when we talk about emissions and when we talk about GHG, that only 26 of the largest 350 food and agriculture companies across the globe have set science-based targets that are aligned with Paris. 26. That means we need a lot more companies to be taking on targets and commitments toward the Paris Agreement. If you go to slide 8, you will see that it's not just about GHG. There's much more that we need to discuss when we're talking about sustainable business practices and sustainable agriculture. So the benchmark also looks at these topics that you see here on the screen. On the next slide, yes, you will see some of the key outcomes on these topics, where we see that companies are stepping up their efforts here and there, but that a lot more needs to be done. There's a lot of ambition in all industries that we have assessed, but that this ambition needs to be translated into action. Actionable targets, quantitative data, there's a big lack of that when we look at all the companies and on their reporting on key issues in the social, environment and nutrition areas of food system transformation. And the final slide, because I think I need to wrap up, is again showing you a little bit of a flavor of the outcomes that we have published as part of the Food and Agriculture Benchmark. WBA is continuing the conversation with all of these companies in scope on improving their performance and on improving our methodology moving forward. So we much welcome further input from you, and we can be reached through our social means, but also through our website. I'm handing it over to you, Simon. Thank you so much for this opportunity, and I hope for furthering the conversation about private sector engagement on these important topics.
Thank you so much, Sani, really for highlighting. A big round of applause from those in the room today. Thank you so much, highlighting the successes, the positives that are taking place, and of course, also how much more there is to do. To do more, we need innovation. So turning to our next speaker, to Andy, your keynote speech, and particularly how we can close that innovation gap.
Okay, thanks so much, Simon. So it's a pleasure to be talking here. We've been working, and it was lovely seeing that data and that benchmarking, and it very much matches up with what we're seeing. I mean, to be honest, I've been working for 12 years now in the CGIAR on agriculture, food security, and climate issues, and that's everything from on the ground to attending COPs and being in these kinds of in partnerships with public sector, private sector. And after 10 years, the team, we kind of reflected, and we were like, the size of the challenge, the demand for solutions that there is out there is far greater than what we have in terms of the supply. And so we need to change the equation. We need to massively ramp up ambition. And that is going to happen through innovation. We need new solutions, and that comes from the innovation side of things. And so we're very happy to be here now, launching this global action agenda for transforming food systems through innovation. I don't know if any of you were in the Climate Shot event on Saturday. We had Idris Elba and Sabrina Elba there presenting and giving some star-studded drilling up support for this, and it was fantastic to get that. I'd say what we need is not just Idris Elba, but all the other Marvel superheroes to come around the table and push this through. It's absolutely critical. And something he said is we can't eat innovation, and that's true. I've never seen on the menu a cheese and innovation sandwich. You can't eat it directly, but indirectly, it's in everything that you are consuming. Our agriculture, our food security is dependent on innovation. It's been the building blocks behind everything that is our food system right now. So it's absolutely critical. And the investment is massive. There was a recent study by the Commission on Sustainable Intensification. And what that looked at was it identified $50 to $70 billion of investment in innovation going on in the agricultural sector. And that's a big chunk of money. But most worryingly, just 7% of it can be kind of characterized, mapped as driving towards delivering climate goals or environmental benefits. And so that's the root of our problem. We need to grow that pie. And so we're launching this global action agenda together with 150 plus organizations, and we've been working very hard on this with FCDO here as hosts and a range of organizations. And really what we're trying to do is four things. First of all, we need to increase the investment. We need more investment going into innovation that is solving some of the many, many challenges. And this is in food systems transformation. This is everything from the inputs that farmers and agriculture requires, getting better inputs in there, and it could be seed technologies, it can be on the production side, getting better production, but then all the way through the food system to the consumer, so that we are transforming our food systems, because right now they're on a pathway that is simply not delivering the demand that the climate action agenda requires. And so we need to increase that investment. But we also want to grow that 7%. So that 7% of the 50 to 70 billion needs to hit at least 1/3 or more. So we need to grow that 7 up to 33, and I would argue everything we should be doing in innovation needs to be climate sensitive. Everything needs to be thinking about this front and center and have metrics and targets going after it. So we need to grow it. We need to nurture the partnerships and nurture the kind of new business models that bring new innovations to scale. And so too many innovations sit on the shelf. They don't get scaled out. We need to be developing these, co-developing them with the range of partners and the end beneficiaries of these kinds of innovations, and deploying them and getting them out at scale. And then what we need is an agenda that's learning. And so, we need to be constantly reflecting on how this is going, how is it growing, where are the innovations that are working, why are they working, and how can we do this better? So that's our global action agenda. We're launching this, as I say, started with Climate Shot on Saturday with the Glitzy launch. We also have an event with many of the partners here in the room tomorrow in the Loch Lomond room at 11:30 tomorrow morning. And so there we'll be talking about how, showing some examples of what are these innovations and some of the success stories, and the need, again, reiterating the need that we need to fundamentally increase our investment, and we need to make that investment much smarter around these things. Thanks very much.
Brilliant, Andy. Big thanks to you. Round of applause to Andy as well. Therefore, highlighting the importance of ramping up investment and ramping up innovation-related investment. So thank you, Andy. So now turning more broadly to our panelists, Carla, I'll start with you. Carla, how does the EU support research in developing countries in line with the European Green Deal and the Farm to Fork strategy?
Thank you very much, Simon. I think Sunny in our first intervention already underlined very well the link between climate and agriculture and the impact. I think I don't need to introduce the Green Deal that you just mentioned, so the European strategy to have Europe climate neutral by 2015. And also maybe that one brand of the concrete action to operationalize this strategy is our strategy Farm to Fork. So really the intention to work to the transformation of the agriculture to new food system chain. And as Simon just mentioned, to reach this transformation, really the first things that we need is to work on research and innovation. Whatever we do, Sunny already mentioned, I think all the work on soil health and agrobiodiversity, fertilizer, the water use, the pesticide, on all this big issue, we need to continue to work on research and innovation. From the European Union, there is a strong engagement to work on innovation and research. I think in Europe, as you maybe know, we have really mobilized the new research funds, the Europe Horizon into the agriculture. One of the big components is the financing to support the agricultural transformation, but also we have reflected this intention for our partner countries, and we have setting up concrete funds to support the innovation and the strategy. Allow me to mention the program of Desira, an engagement of 20 270 million to support the research, but also just some days ago, our President van der Leyen announced the support to the one CGR with, so it's the global network of 15 research centers. She pledged the 140 million really to support more research and more innovation between Europe and the partner countries. So a lot of efforts. When we are talking about innovation and research, of course, in our intention is we are looking to public and the private sector, because really we think that the key elements is the involvement of the private sector. Allow me to mention, when we look to the private sector, there are two steps that are important. One is to continue to work with our partner countries, the public authorities, in order to improve the environment that will enable the private sector to intervene in also this domain. The second message is the involvement of the private sector in platform, in multi-sector, multi-actors platform in the different value chain, because it's this multi-actors platform that will allow to the public and the private and the farmers and the cooperative and the association of the farmers really to understand better the needs for common action in all this domain, the agricultural sector. So we really are focusing on improving, on soliciting, on stimulating the creation of this multi-stakeholders platform in order to increase the dialogue between the public and the private sector and understand better the needs, each other needs, to have a common benefit in all this domain. So clearer work on smart agriculture with a great involvement of researcher and the private sector.
Thank you very much, Carla. So Renee, turning to you and building on this theme of innovation, how do you see innovation as being a lever here to build climate resilience?
Yeah, just as the previous two speakers said, I mean, the private sector is essential and innovation is essential. I'm overlooking a portfolio of activities of about 750 million euros, water, energy and food. And I think also one of the ways I can contribute to innovation is also to make sure that these things are not too stovepiped. Because sometimes the institutional framework of what we do as donors is such that it even limits innovation. So that is something that we find very important. We're doing wonderful things like the SNV is doing, and that's also why we partner with you on craft, to make the livelihood of poor people better. But oftentimes I think as a donor community we should also really look into the question whether the things that we set up, are they really helping, or are they just or is it too focused? Is it too dispersed? So that is one of the things that we're looking into. We're also big supporters of CGIAR and working with them on a white paper on how to engage better with the private sector, and also to talk about issues of scaling up. So that is definitely also something that we're doing. Our research and agricultural and life sciences, I should say, life sciences University Wageningen is teaming up in the action agenda. You've also invited us to look into it. Well, we're working. I still have a caretaker government, but let's look into this because it's very promising. And of course, we're big fans of the Green Deal of the European Commission. And also, I think as Team Europe, when we go abroad, we should also really look into this question of how are we going to stimulate innovation. I think we can really, as a donor community, do better in that respect.
Thank you, Renee, very much. And thank you also for highlighting something such as the Team Europe initiatives and a real call for us all to find ways to work better together through more coordinated, joined up interventions. We might come back to that perhaps a little bit later. And please, to the audience, whether online or here in the room, start thinking about any questions you have for our panelists. So turning now to Jacob in Uganda. Jacob, how does CRAFT, tell us a bit about CRAFT, please, and how does this CRAFT program engage the private sector in investing in climate smart innovations in agricultural practices?
Thank you, Simon, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So CRAFT, the Climate Resilient Agribusiness for Tomorrow, is a consortium-led project and is supported by the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs And we are a consortium of 5, SNV as the lead, Wageningen University of Research, CCAFs, AgriTerra for Cooperatives, together working with Rubber Bank, the financial institution. And specifically, Craft uses a triple helix partnership model where we kind of engage in ensuring that climate science from research based on the university, we engage with Wageningen University and research, informs behavioral change, which is a mindset shift, and policy and business investments in climate change adaptation. And more so ensuring that this particularly impacts on the smallholder farmers who we feel are much more vulnerable to the climate change impacts, especially that they depend on subsistence agriculture that is majorly rain-fed. So for us to make that transformation, we are engaging with the private sector. And how do we engage with the private sector to reach the smallholder farmers? We specifically co-create bankable, inclusive, climate-smart business plans, because that is an entry point for a business to invest. And particularly those business plans are informed by the climate risk and opportunity assessments that actually inform what kind of adaptation practices the different agribusinesses, who could be SMEs and cooperatives, can prioritize in reaching to smallholders in improving their productivity. And in so doing, we also now de-risk the investment of those particular business plans using what we call our Climate Innovation and Investment Facility, which is a tool which is majorly a matching grant facility. And we're using this facility to unlock private and public finance, and specifically to execute those particular identified and prioritized climate change adaptation options that businesses then who are SMEs or cooperatives are able to implement within the value chains in which we have selected, and based on the risk assessments that we've conducted. And this all is aimed at trying to increase productivity at the smallholder farmer level, but increasing business performance of those aggregating SMEs and cooperatives, who then increase their turnover based on some of these climate risk adaptation options that have been prioritized, which could include seed, particularly, which could include post-harvest handling equipment, among others. But now, having ensured that we've co-created those business plans, we also, in addition, facilitate knowledge and technology transfer, because we realize that we also want to address the knowledge and awareness gaps in the private sector, who then connect with the smallholder farmers through trainings, developing some kind of customizable tools that they can use for climate risk assessments, but also for trying to develop the prioritized adaptation options that they feel have a clear business case for them as a business, but also are inclusive in nature, that the smallholders who are much more vulnerable within their supply chains are included. And with that, this particular engagement has underlying silent futures, and those silent futures specifically is the evidence from the climate science, where we have the climate risk assessment and opportunity assessments to inform those particular investments. But most importantly, one of the silent features is the inclusion. How do we ensure that the most vulnerable are included within these particular business plans, and all actors within the chain are brought in together, and different incentives that attract either market actors or financing actors? And particularly important within these is the partnerships, because co-creating these business plans brings in partners from finance, from the public sector, in ensuring that the different goals of the private sector are achieved, the impacts the smallholders that they work with are achieved, but also some of the core benefits to the public extension system is achieved in trying to extend their services to the smallholder farmers. So that is specifically what we do as Craft in trying to support the private sector. And all these particular underlying features in partnerships, inclusion of science, and inclusion of specifically the most vulnerable are intended to support scaling and sustainability of this market-led approach to CSR adoption. Thank you, Simon.
Fantastic, Jacob. Thank you so much. Great. So turning now to our last panelist, Elia in Tanzania. Elia, can you tell us, please, just a little bit about how is investment in climate-smart innovation supporting the growth of your business?
Thank you, Simon, for that question. So as we are the company that is really high-powered in technology to integrate smallholder farmers to the urban markets and informal retailers in fresh produce and other food items, the smart agriculture has really enabled us to first on the operational side, where the productivity per farmer has really improved. And we are talking about double to triple yields per farmer, which ultimately make farmers increase their income per year. A very live example that when we started to engage some of the farmers, the basic annual income was less than $640 a year, and it has now tripled to almost $1,800 a year per farmer. And this is the group of farmers that we are targeting with SNV, 3,500 smallholder farmers with a potential to reach over 10,000 smallholder farmers in Tanzania. And the other operational point, which is really important, is the quality improvement of the produce from the farmers. And this is enabling us as the business to be able to deliver the right quality and quantities to our consumers in the cities, but also making the farmers being able to get more income by having reducing or eliminating food waste in the processes. The most important part as we link it to the technology, which is the core part of the business, is the fact that we have been able to establish a sustainable ordering system that matches the supply and demand and really gives us an opportunity to predict the customer's demand and deliver the same order to farmers so that they can prepare their farms and be able to harvest what is required, ultimately reducing the food waste, but also lowering the cost per transaction. That has been really helpful being partners with SNV for that matter.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, friends, we're using the platform Slido for our questions. So, if you could please use that platform to send through any questions. We've got one coming in already straight away. So, what are the key challenges preventing agricultural innovation from reaching farmers? And concretely, how can the private sector help? Shall I start with you, Andy, on that one? Key challenges, key barriers.
I can jump in with some ideas on that. I mean, reaching farmers, there's so much innovation that doesn't get out there. This is one of the big hurdles, and this is why we need a learning agenda, so that we're learning why and we're overcoming some of these challenges. But I would turn it around. I mean, I think the private sector is so central at reaching. If you're going to reach scale, the tentacles that the private sector have across our food system is tremendous. They have that capacity, and they can, if you get the right business models, we can get there. I mean, I think a lot of the challenge, something that we've got to be really good at, is mixing innovations that agricultural. It could be practices, it could be management, it could be improved technologies, things. It could be solar irrigation schemes, things like this. But the adoption and getting that out is often lacking because you're not aligning it with the finance that's needed and so on. And so I think a lot of it is about bundling. We need to be able to bundle, not just have the great technologies and the innovations, bundle that with the finance and bundle it with the services that can go out that can help stimulate that adoption. So that's absolutely critical. I mean, there are some amazing examples of solar irrigation systems now across Africa where it really is increasing resilience, providing incredible benefits in terms of adaptation. But it's a big jump for farmers on their own to make, and so that's where this, as I say, this teaming up with private sector and having access to finance and linking it up to digital agriculture applications and things like that, we can just push it over the line and ensure that adoption is faster. So it's really working in partnership. Absolutely critical.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much, Andy. And maybe just going off script a little bit on this partnerships piece, Carla, within a more joined up Team Europe initiative framework, what more can we be doing better together to really concretize those partnerships that de-risk and enable more innovation?
Thank you. I want to just link with what Simon is saying, because clearly what I was saying in the previous intervention, creating a pulling together expertise and the dialogue between the private and the farmer. Allow me also to say that there is not a silver bullet for solving all these issues. We really need also to be very context focused. So platform, dialogue, private, farmers, public, all together in a specific context, in a specific countries, like we have seen the previous intervention. About the financial, the previous intervention was also speaking about the risking investment. I think this is very important, and we want also to stimulate this. In our new financial instrument, Global Europe, we have also foreseen a new financial instrument to facilitate the intervention of the private sector, putting in place some guarantees of blending system that will allow, through the intervention of financial institution, development financial institution, to reach and to promote the intervention of the private sector in the agriculture, sector, because it's, allow me to say, there is not the most economic benefit that will keep the attention of the private sector. So inside stimulate the private sector intervention in the agriculture, it's one of the most challenging things to do.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. René, what would you add there on the partnership side?
Well, previous speaker said almost everything, so that's been pretty good. But what goes wrong in our partnerships is what I tried to say earlier, is that we have there's too many demarcations between our programs, so that's not very helpful. And what I also think what shows, for example, the World Benchmark Alliance, what it did is it shows which companies are pushing the future, are pushing and pushing innovation and are sort of adapting themselves. So I would say, if you really want to have smart business propositions, you need to be climate smart in agriculture. And I think that's so valuable about the work about the Benchmark Alliance, because it could also give some information to the financial markets of what are companies who are really trying to prepare themselves for the future. And it is those kind of companies that, of course, we can work with. Or let's say, or it's the other ones who are not part of the winning team yet, who we should engage with and talk to. That's for example why in the Netherlands we will introduce a law, and hopefully in the European Union, on corporate social responsibility, to really think through what goes on in your value chain. And if you think through what goes on through your value chain, you probably do better due diligence, and you're probably also a little bit smarter about what's going to happen to you, and it might actually really also stimulate innovation.
Thank you very much. Okay, and we have our next question. What are the expectations? What do you expect from COP26 to shift the dial on agricultural innovation to mitigate and adapt to climate change? Perhaps we can go to Elia. Should we start with you? What are your hopes and expectations from COP26?
Thank you so much for that. And my question, my answer to that will really focus on the finances side. And as we have mentioned that financing, there's a lot of finance gap in agriculture businesses. And even when such enterprises or companies are able to get the finances, the interest rate is significantly high. That makes them not being able to perform as they should. So for me, I think the biggest change that I would hope is to really have the understanding of the financial institutions that the agriculture needs special attention in terms of the finances, to design the special packages for businesses that are dealing with farmers, businesses which are in the value chain in the agriculture, that minimizes the burden of interest rates and the fees that can really impact the margins. So basically, it's on the interest rate but also changing the access to the finances to the farmers who are not bankable. Most of the farmers, 98% in Tanzania and other countries in sub-Saharan Africa, are not bankable. It is a challenge, but it is a huge opportunity to the financial institutions to have them bankable. And that is what I would hope from this conference.
Thank you very much, Elia. So very, very much around an enabling environment there. And Sani, if I can turn to you, your hopes building on your introductory remarks.
Thank you, Simon. Twofold. I hope the urgency that COP is bringing will translate itself into more commitments, targets, and more data with regard to what companies in the private sector is doing. And that there will be more focus on accountability, because setting commitment is one. It's also really about taking action and holding those to account that are responsible for all of that impact on our climate.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. We have another question here. Great question, actually one very close to my heart. Innovations have to meet farmers' needs, not what others think they need. How are farmers involved in such needs-based assessments? Who would like to take that one?
I mean, I can.
Andy, why don't we start with you?
I can jump in straight away. I totally agree. Absolutely. I mean, we've been working in CGIAR on this for, as I say, I've been working very closely on the climate-related work, and in CGIAR, we did a kind of systematic analysis of where were we most successful? What were the factors of success when agricultural innovation led to impact on the ground? And one of the factors was that you co-create with the end users, and you identify not what the researcher or the expert has their pet project that I like to do, but what the end users need. And you start there. You start with what they need, and then you work backwards and bring the expertise in there. So it is the number one factor of success that you need to do. And I think we've got to everyone needs to learn to be a lot better at that.
Yeah, absolutely. So participatory methodology is right, underscoring the importance of that. And to make a little plug, those of you who may not have seen it, we at SMB have just supported a group called Réseau Bilital Maroubé on a very participatory study of over 1,700 pastoralists or agro-pastoralists in the Sahel to better understand their needs, the opportunities they see, and how we as development actors can further enable them to harness those opportunities for themselves. Jacob, let's turn to you. Out in Uganda, how would you like to respond to that question around how we enable more inclusive and participatory processes?
Thank you, Simon. Particularly, how do we ensure that the smallholder who is more vulnerable, how do we ensure that the youth, the women who are much more vulnerable within these value chains are included? It's important to realize that we then blend within the risk assessments, which are more contextualized. We blend the science together with the indigenous knowledge of the farmers. So we ensure that we engage the farmers in a participatory approach to understand how they have been farming and what kind of changes they've been seeing and what kind of indigenous technologies they feel could actually be scaled. And then marry that together with the science and ensure that we come up with a solution that benefits them. But as you realize also, most of our farmers are faced with a challenge around financing. So they are willing to adopt these technologies, and they're also financing needs. And again, that's where we have to understand what are the available local financing options. Could be through savings group association among farmers that enable them adopt small technologies such as solar drying through a group financing effort, such as a solar irrigation system through a group financing effort. So that is how we engage with the smallholder farmers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jacob. Lots of great questions coming in. Thank you all very much. So there's one, I think probably Carla directed towards you. How would the EU deal with conflicts of interest created by private sector at local level regarding sustainable food procurement while committing for sustainable food systems at a global level? So that engagement with the private sector, the enabling environment around that? What's your perspective there?
In any case, whatever the EU is taking a regulation, it's analyzing a regulation. The first thing that we do is the dialogue with all the actors involved. The dialogue with the actors could be the private citizen, could be the public authorities, will be the private sector. So in any case, there will be, for each kind of regulation, this dialogue with all the key partners around. Now, of course, any kind of legislation have an impact on Europe, have an impact on the third countries, and we need to deal with the impact of this kind of regulation. And what we are, in any case, doing, looking to the new legislation that is coming in the context of the Green Deal, of course, to be able to support also our partner countries in order to them to face and to challenge the new standards that maybe will be imposed by the new EU legislation.
Thank you. Thank you. And then there's one, what do you think about the collaboration with the transport sector? Certainly we need innovations in the transport sector, that's for sure. Anyone, would you like to offer anything on innovations or collaborations within global transport?
We're running a couple of projects on the cold chain, which of course is key. And then of course, how do you make sure that it is also localized and that it has the size that fits the production capacity? We're doing that in many countries. So yes, of course, agriculture is logistics, because or let's say food security is logistics, just as much as it is water. So it's a key component. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Perhaps Elliot, turning to you, what more do you see can be done to de-risk investments from the private sector? What more can be done to enable a de-risking?
Yeah, thank you for that. My first side, when working with the smallholder farmers, is really training the farmers in the right direction. And I'll take what my colleague said earlier, that having a full package of the technology to the farmer is not just enough, but really adding extra, for example, SMS or smartphones for irrigation activation really needs to be trained to the farmers, because there is a very significant gap in terms of the knowledge, their knowledge and what is actually being innovated. So really, for me, training will be a number one thing to make sure that they help to produce what is really expected. But on the other hand is the businesses now. On our side, as I mentioned earlier, the interest rates, the loans, and the initial investment cost for technologies and innovations is really significant for businesses. And that is where de-risking come in play, where we have sustainable loans, could be long-term loans with low interest rates, a mixture of match funding finances that will help the business to stabilize in the first few years of introducing a technology or innovation or a solution to farmers that can enable them to grow their businesses and the business also grow.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Are there funded tools for private farmers as a whole in my country for the transition to ecological agriculture and environmental protection? Are there funded tools for private farmers? Are we aware of any funded tools out there for private farmers? Carla, do you?
What I can say that in our financial package, we have foreseen, I was mentioning, some new innovative funds through blending or guarantees. We support our financial institution, development financial institution, European financial institution, to propose, put in place funds that then will support the farmers. So this is the new EFCD Plus, the new European Sustainable Funds that will support this kind of a project. And we have foreseen a cluster specific for innovation and for agriculture. So the funds will be there, but I very much agree with Elias that one key problem is to have a bankable project. So what is also important in our side is foreseen technical assistance support, increase capacity really to prepare and to develop bankable project that could be financed and supported financially by the financial institutions.
Sure. Yeah.
This is one of the key challenges that we have in the agricultural sector.
Understood, and thank you. And I might add, within the CRAFT programme and also within the Dutch Fund for Climate and Development, we're heavily involved in origination facilities, so trying to find those bankable projects and then providing technical assistance and support to enable those larger volumes of either blended or other forms of financing. That's obviously critical. The challenge is, how do you do that in more fragile or higher risk environments? Hence the earlier question and the response around de-risking or enabling investment in those contexts. Thank you. I think, ladies and gentlemen, that's probably all we've got time for in terms of questions. I'd now like to invite Simon to take to the podium to give us some concluding remarks. And thank you for all the great questions.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you, panel. A really fascinating discussion. Lots of different perspectives from business, from government, and from the world of research. So thank you. Just before I do summarize that, I'd like to take us back to the beginning of COP26 and the World Leaders Summit and the Agriculture Innovation Breakthrough that was announced as part of that. Really setting the challenge which today's session has been trying to address, how to make climate smart agriculture the go-to choice of farmers around the world. Clearly, we've heard today the private sector is essential in order to achieve this, a $5 trillion sector. And yet, agriculture is risky. It's perceived as one of the riskiest sectors. And innovation within agriculture is even more risky. So there is a clear role for governments and policymakers to try to stimulate action. And we've heard lots of ideas on how to do that today. And so far, the private sector is not stepping up to the plate from what we've heard from the World Benchmarking Alliance. It's a shame we didn't get to see all the results, but if you look at the results in detail, they're quite shocking in terms of what major food and agriculture companies are doing on this agenda. So there's a clear need for more action, but then we can't just leave it to the private sector. So what have we heard today? Three sort of core approaches to stimulating more action from the private sector in this agenda. The first clear message I think we've heard is around the need for more investment in the core innovation and research itself. We've heard about the funding for CARLA's and the EU's funding for CGIAR, and other countries as well, like the UK, are funding that. And last week we also heard about the Agriculture Innovation Mission for Climate, $4 billion of funding including from 6 European countries and the UK for innovation. So there's lots happening, but we have to make it relevant and user-centered, I think was the phrase that Andy used. So reaching that target of 1/3 of research, which is set by the Global Agriculture Innovation, the Global Action Agenda, reaching that target of 1/3 of research focusing on climate and also making it as demand-driven as possible. So more research, more investment in research is needed. The second area I think we've heard is around the need to work to scale up business models and also scale up technical innovations. We've seen what CRAFT is doing, providing technical assistance and support to businesses to help them get finance. And we've heard from innovative business models like the East Africa Fruits, where they're connecting rural farmers and urban markets and looking to expand. And they need de-risking capital, technical assistance, other policy levers which governments and donors can provide to really help that get off the ground. I also wanted to go back to the bundling point there. I think we're not just talking about innovations in terms of new technologies, but also innovations in terms of business models, and looking at those models that bundle conventional services with climate smart techniques or bundle finance together with the technology. Those, I think, have got a lot of potential, and a program, if I can just plug my little program as I'm here, the CASA program has just published research on that, talking to more than 20 investors globally, and they're looking at bundling, investing in businesses that bundle services together. The final area, I think, where we've heard that we need more action and we need more investment is attracting more capital into these businesses, working with investors, development finance organizations, or impact investors to actually stimulate their investment. And how can we do that? Well, we're doing it partly through our development finance institutions. Many major nations have them. The UK's CDC group has a 200 million climate innovation fund, which they announced last week, and has committed to doubling its investment on climate-related investments. And similar commitments have been made by other development finance institutions. So there's more finance coming, but it's not just a question of concessional capital. I think the really exciting thing is about the potential of the climate short agriculture action agenda, bringing together impact investors, researchers, policymakers in a forum to talk about what they're doing, to highlight the demands so that we can make the research more demand-led, and then to showcase the successful business models and examples that have taken off in order to make the case to the business community and to investors for more investment in this sector. So overall, I think we've heard. I've learned a lot from the sessions. So for me, the lessons were more research, more scaling, more investment, and the message that goes throughout all of that and throughout everything we've heard today, I think, is around the need for it to be a collaboration between government policymakers, business and research together. And then we can all enjoy our cheese and innovation sandwich as part of the celebrations. So thank you, I'll stop there.
Thank you very much, Simon. So with President Obama starting at 2 o'clock, I think I won't keep us waiting. I will just say a very sincere and warm thank you to our fabulous panelists, both those of you who have joined us here in person in Glasgow, to those of you online, a big thanks, and to conclude by saying that I think we've heard some real glimmers of hope and optimism around the innovations happening, the partnerships happening, results being delivered, and now is clearly the moment to take those to that next level of scale through bigger, better, and at times bolder partnerships. So thank you all very much for joining us.